If you've been a 40k fan for a while, you will see a bunch of discussions across all platforms about who the strongest Primarch really is. The 18 gifted demigod sons of the God Emperor of Mankind are some of the strongest and most unique beings in all of 40k. So it isn't surprising people want to know which one stands above the rest. But people just can't seem to decide on who the strongest really is. Is it Sanguinius with his gift of foresight and insane blade skill? Is it Angron with his unbridled ferocity that can overpower a titan? Or hell, is it Vulcan, who, if you didn't know, can die as many times as he likes, just to come back and explain what a hammer is? Well, what if I told you, it's a Primarch you wouldn't normally expect to be the strongest. He is not the fastest of them all, not the most intellectual, and hell, not even the best with a blade. But instead, master of all, and a willingness to perfect his skill in a single craft to the point he overshadows all of his brothers. That Primarch is Fulgrim, the most perfect son of the Emperor before he fell into the grasp of Slaanesh. He has beaten the most Primarchs out of all of his brothers. He has had the highest highs, but also experienced the lowest lows. He is the Phoenician that allowed both his homeworld and Space Marine Legion to rise above the ashes of despair and ignite into paragons of power. But he was also so beloved by his sons that when he fell, they fell deeper than he ever would. But how has he done this? How did he beat every brother he has fought so far? What sets him apart from the other Primarchs and gives him such a high win-to-loss ratio? Is he really the best duelist to have ever existed? Or is there something more to it? A dark desire or carnal power that allows him to rise above his brothers and in the end, beat every single one of them? We are gonna take a look at all that and a whole load more in this video. But before we get into the lore, a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, the definitive tactical Warhammer gaming experience on mobile. It's got everything a fan of the grimdark future could possibly want. From over 80 iconic champions across 18 playable factions, to new features and content such as game modes for extensive PvE campaigns, PvP content, as well as my favorite, which is the guild raids, for when me and my friends come together to fight a big evil boss like a Tyrannid Turvagon or even Mortarion. This month's Tacticus update brings the Emperor's children onto the playing field. These horrifying Chaos Space Marines were once the Emperor's proudest legion, but their pursuit of perfection led them down a path of excess and corruption. Now they are slaves to sensation and sound. They serve the Dark Prince Slaanesh, and let me tell you, they do not hold back. In Tacticus, the Emperor's children are designed to be aggressive, ability-driven damage dealers who overwhelm their enemies with fast and unpredictable attacks from all sides, allowing you as the commander of your champions to truly test the mettle of your tactical skill and show the world that you are the most perfect champion of Slaanesh. Besides this awesome faction being added to the game, Tacticus is also celebrating its 3rd year anniversary on August the 15th, and with its 4.5 star rating on the app stores, if you haven't already, this is the perfect moment to get started on your Tacticus adventure. Use the link down in the description and comment section below, or scan the QR code on screen to download the game. Alright, let's get back to the lore. Few Primarchs would rise and fall like Fulgrim, but other than the gene sire of the Emperor's children, who exactly is Fulgrim? Landing on the world of Chemos, Fulgrim is a Primarch who was raised in poverty and hardship. Gifted as he was, Fulgrim would quickly rise to the society of Chemos by becoming a living legend. To the people of his world, Fulgrim was a blessing. He understood the harsh reality of life in the mines, and would work even harder to elevate his people. After meeting his golden father and joining the Great Crusade, Fulgrim expected perfection and unquestionable obedience from his sons. With this came one command, that they ensure they would always raise humanity to where it belongs. Fulgrim desired to be a paragon and exemplar in all things, mastering generalship, martial skill, governance, reason and endeavor, and passed these values onto his legion. Like the people of Chemos, Fulgrim inherited a legion on its last legs before extinction, and he helped it climb to new heights of glory thought impossible. But in all his perfection, Fulgrim was not above hubris, his doubt spoiled, where the seeds of heresy would grow, making him an easy target for the Prince of Excess, Slaanesh. Fulgrim's love for the arts and culture of all species made him take his first step into corruption when fighting the Lair. Unknown to the Crusading Legion, these snake-like Xenos worshipped She Who Durst. But the beauty of their temple caught the Primarch's attention. When he took up a blade from that dark place, the demon within would steer Fulgrim down the path of damnation, a warm whisper that slowly enveloped his Primarch's soul. Fulgrim was among the greatest of the Primarchs, one of the best of his brothers, and his fall during the Horus Heresy would be the hardest. He killed his closest brother Ferrus Manus on Istvan V, and in that very moment, Fulgrim gave in to deep despair. When he finally re-emerged, he returned a monster. Fulgrim's pursuit of perfection was finished, and now there was only indulgence in excess. Brothers would wane and disgust would flow freely around him. Perturabo's soul was torn by Fulgrim's betrayal, Dorn bled for wishing to fight him on Terra, and Robute Gilliman nearly paid the ultimate price for trying to duel him during the Scouring. Where once Fulgrim embodied human skill, refinement and progress, the drive to achieve perfection in all things, now he has become a vessel of the most depraved kind of corruption. His doubt has grown into an ego. Humanity is beneath him, and he even treats his own sons like little more than diversions. Now, 10,000 years later, Fulgrim has become an obsession for his sons, where doubt made him want to prove himself to his father back in those glorious days. His sons wish to impress him just the same. The Emperor's children fight for the greatest duelist to have ever existed, and even their best cannot hold a candle against the prowess of this indulgent snake. With that tastefully dramatic intro out of the way, what sets Fulgrim apart from his brothers? Weren't they all obsessed with a good combat record and getting one over the other? Or is there something more to it? Fulgrim's first main strength is his incredible speed. We have seen him perform a variety of insane stunts, from catching a bullet mid-air intended to assassinate a governor, to not only chasing down a fleeing gunship, but even jumping multiple dozen meters into the sky to catch it and bring it crashing down with one fell swoop. His second Primarch power would be his uncanny ability to heal from wounds in ways no mortal man ever could or should. From getting shot mid-battle and healing before having turned around to counter the assailant, to getting sniped and recovering from a wound that should normally have killed any of his brothers, besides maybe Vulcan. Perturabo describes the ability in Angel Exterminatus as unnatural. It is too fast, to the point that Fulgrim is a lot more durable than most people think for his thin frame. Then his third and final power lies in his aptitude for perfecting any skill or discipline. Before the Lair Sword, Fulgrim showed that his wisdom far surpasses the greatest philosophers and thinkers of the 31st millennium. He is a politician without equal, a charismatic leader who can only be rivaled by Horus's unspeakable riz. And if you didn't know, he has got skill with machines that made even Ferrus Manus admit he might be defeated in the art of the forge. So yeah, Fulgrim's accomplishments are many and he has got a lot of skills. But the same goes for all of his brothers, right? I hear you ask. What makes him different? Well, I'm glad you asked, because indeed, there is a lot more to him than meets the eye. It isn't the allowance to wear the Aquila on his chest, it isn't his obsession with overachieving and getting one up on his brothers. No, there is a way darker answer. Which also is where his true strength lies, and how he can fold any Primarch with surprising ease. When Fulgrim came into the fold of the Imperium, he found himself at the height of the Great Crusade, fought by 20 legions. While the likes of Horus had spent decades building and leading their legion into one of the mightiest weapons in the entire galaxy, Fulgrim inherited the 3rd Legion, which consisted of a mere 200 warriors. While they were not the only legion to have suffered, their mutation had put them into a death spiral. With Fulgrim's arrival, he could save his sons, and more importantly, lead them to glory. Fulgrim sought to make his legion great in many ways, from being able to conquer a single world in a handful of days, to mastering every discipline of war. The Legiones Astartes were a brutal and efficient weapon, which became unstoppable with the Primarch at their head. But Fulgrim did not just want an unstoppable legion, he needed the perfect legion, one which would never fail. This would lead to much self-doubt. As the brotherhood of the Primarchs grew, the perfection of Fulgrim began to crack. Blood Angels, Ultramarines and White Scars all laughed at the Emperor's children. Although Jagatai Khan never voiced it, Fulgrim's perfection never sat as naturally on him as it did on Sanguinius. Although, quick side note, the Khan also straight up roasted Fulgrim by saying that saving his son from super cancer is a weird thing to do. I would have turned traitor in that very moment as well. In sheer number of conquests, the Emperor's children would be left behind as the Dark Angels and Sons of Horus expanded at an exponential rate. Every legion showered itself in victory and glory, but why could the perfect third not keep up? This self-doubt is both what pushed Fulgrim far beyond his peers and would also become his greatest weakness. His fears made him perfect in every aspect of war, and he became the best leader, but it also made him vain and arrogant. This is best seen in his sons, the likes of Lord Commander Eidolon or Lucius, claiming to be perfect like their Primarch wants them to be, but both are in reality failures. Eidolon hides his defeats from Fulgrim so he might create for himself an untarnished reputation. Lucius, on the other hand, became so obsessed with the blade that it would lead him down the road of madness. The crack in Fulgrim's facade would be one he could never see or understand. The people loved him and adored him. Was this not enough? He would say yes, but that is a lie he does tell himself. No matter how much Fulgrim sought perfection, it would always just be out of reach. And this dark desire, this last line, perfection, just out of reach, gives him his strength. He plays dirty, he's willing to lie, he's willing to backstab, destroy and sacrifice anything for a vain victory. In every way, he wants it more than anyone else. And this means he is willing to do more than anyone else. But how does this power and desire show itself in the novels? How does Fulgrim beat his brothers, who, don't forget, are demigod super warrior ultra-humans that have obliterated entire systems with mere sword and bolter? Is Fulgrim actually overpowered, or did he just get lucky? Let's pit Fulgrim against his brothers and see how he would fare. Although the Primarchs are some of the best warriors and warlords humanity has ever produced, they are far from equal to each other. The easiest example is Magnus and his psychic gifts, or Horus, beloved by the Emperor more than any of his brothers, who became War Master. In a sense, even Leman Russ and Rogel Dorn were held above some of their brothers, one being the Emperor's executioner and the other his Praetorian and Guardian of Terra. But do these titles also extend to the skills of the Primarchs on the battlefield? Like, what is the standard power level of a Primarch? Instead of telling you, let's take a look at how a Primarch actually fights and how they fare against each other, so we can better understand how Fulgrim could beat them. Our first example is the fight between Corax and Lorgar, which shows even with psychic powers, Lorgar is arguably one of the weakest Primarchs in a fight against their brothers, as seen in First Heretic. The fighting on Isfahan 5 was an absolute massacre. 3 loyalist Space Marine legions were dying. The Salamanders, Raven Guard and Iron Hands saw their end approaching. Surrounded on all sides, their only hope of survival was their Primarchs. Corvus Corax was a black whirlwind of slaughter, carving such a bloody path through the word-bearers that Lorgar wept at the loss of so many of his blessed sons. From Astartes Legionary to Galverbach, all were cut down without a second thought. Even when the Iron Warriors turned their last cannons and their shots hit through, they barely scorched his armor. The rage, the wrath, and feeling of betrayal were so strong in Corax that it made Lorgar pause. Although hesitant and going against the advice of Erebus and Corferan, Lorgar chose to face his brother. Lorgar charged, going into a fight he did not expect to win. His sons believed he would die in that very moment. So far, Lorgar had always held back his psychic potential, but when he charged Corax, his mind screamed. His power was unleashed, and not only did it enhance his physical form, but it did the same for his sons. Psychic fire manifested itself into wings and a halo bearing Lorgar high. Yet with all this power, Corvus was everything his brother was not, a true warrior king. Where Corax fought to kill, Lorgar fought to survive. The battle was one-sided. Corax could evade his brother's Crozius without even having to parry. The Raven Lord weaved, ducked, and used his jump back to boost over heavy swings, while Lorgar worked up a sweat. Corax demanded to know what madness had taken hold of Lorgar, but the bearer of the word threw his brother back. Nevertheless, this move was only met by another boost from the jump pack and its metal wings digging into the First Heretic's armor. Only now would Lorgar land a blow. The blow was not only enough to send Corax sprawling, but all Astartes nearby were thrown to the ground from the shockwave that vibrated through the air. Corax interrogated his brother during the fight, pushing him back, even mocking the fiery wings and halo of Lorgar, calling him a fake angel. In turn, Lorgar was shocked by his brother's warrior spirit and raw anger. Corax's claw dug into his brother's golden skin, but before he could murder him, the golden fire grew with Lorgar's pain and blinded Corax. Lorgar pushed his brother back with all his might, but the Raven Lord once again used his jump back and reached him. One of the Raven's talons was broken, yet the other dug deep into Lorgar's stomach. Although such a blow meant little to a Primarch, Corax dragged his talons up, and Corax would carve the traitor in half. No matter what Lorgar did, he could not get himself free. Choking his brother did not work, nor did headbutting him. Corax tore free his talon, dealing even more damage, and the psychic energies had gone. But before the murder stroke could land, the Raven's talons collided with those of the Night Hunter. Conrad Curse saved his brother in the very last second. For our next example, I think there's none better than the fight between Rogel Dorn and Alfarius, as seen in Praetorian of Dorn. Huskarls and Lernians crashed into the combat, blades shrieking as they bit into armor. The Alpha Legion Terminators killed their Imperial Fist counterparts with Chain Fists and Lightning Claws. Volkite weapons, bolters, energy shields and teleport strikes made almost everyone in their chamber blind. When the Legiones Astartes fought, it often became a battle of sheer number and absolute brutality. All of this was but the backdrop to the duel of Rogel Dorn and Alfarius. Dorn tore into the Lernians, ripping them apart with brutal blows from Storm's teeth. Alfarius in turn cut armor and limbs with his pale spear, retreating and attacking, disappearing only to reappear behind their lines. Dorn was cutting a bloody path through the Alpha Legion, but suddenly the pale spear came for him. The blow was so perfect, it was enough to make even the most veteran of Astartes pause, and those who followed Dorn felt fear as their lord was about to be wounded. Yet, that did not happen. Storm's teeth roared as it parried the pale spear. Alfarius tried to reason with his brother, but his reply was only the roaring of a coming storm. Dorn's next attack was turned aside by the pale spear, and Alfarius dodged the next one. With a lunge, the spear punched through Rogel Dorn's shoulder. Alfarius once again tried to talk to Dorn. He claimed Dorn could not win, and Alfarius always wanted to change that. He claimed to know Dorn's weakness and that of his enemy. He wanted to give him victory. Yet the indomitable Primarch of the 7th Legion wrenched himself free from the spear. Alfarius swung it around, and Huskars fell as their legs were cut out from beneath him. Dorn suddenly was alone and wounded. Alfarius continued to dodge his brother's attack as they came. When Alfarius extended himself, Dorn tried to land a massive blow with his chainsword, only for the trap to be sprung. The spear struck home. It rammed through Dorn's armor and into his flesh, and it stopped. Dorn stood, unmoving, the spear embedded in his shoulder where he had stepped in to take the blow. His left hand locked around the spear's haft. For an instant, the two Primarchs were in arm's reach apart, eye to eye. "Brother," Alfarius began, and Dorn hacked Storm's teeth through Alfarius' arm above the wrist. Blood and sparks fell in the flash of gunfire. The world became a slow sliding tableau of movement. Dorn's face, cold stone, marked with blood and troubling shadows as he pulled the spear from his shoulder. Alfarius staggered, lashing out with a kick. Another cut, sighting left to right. Storm's teeth ripping armor like parchment. Red gloss sheen on indigo blue, and a demigod falling. His torso an open cave of meat and bone. The only sound was the growl of Storm's teeth and the clang as Alfarius struck the deck and began to rise, strength defying the red ruin of his body. Dorn still had the spear in one hand. But victory! Alfarius gasped. Dorn rammed the spear through his brother's chest. The tip punched through the power plant on the back of Alfarius' armor. Alfarius' mouth opened, his eyes wide. A great wash of blood poured from between his teeth. Dorn held him on the spear, the two so close that it almost seemed like an embrace. The air around them was blurring like a heat haze as the blood struck the floor. A high wheel was rising with a coil of wind, which circled the pair. Alfarius' mouth moved, forming words. Dorn was still for a second, his eyes blank and black in the carved stone of his face. Then he pushed Alfarius away. Snakes of light righted through the air. The Primarch of the Alpha Legion staggered, mouth still moving. Rogel Dorn brought Storm's teeth around. The blade cut through Alfarius' skull, and then tore free in a spray of blood and a detonation of light. So yeah, Dorn absolutely folded Alfarius, although the two were far apart in skill. In a lot of ways, Alfarius was kind of the better swordsman. Dorn was simply stronger, tougher, and way more calculating in his strikes. Alfarius fought to survive, Dorn fought to punish, and by the gods, did he punish Alfarius hard. Alright, now that we have established how Primarch fights generally go, let's go through a list of which Primarchs Fulgrim has fought and how he has beaten every single one of them. In the novel Fulgrim, we see Ferrus Manus and Fulgrim fight twice. The first fight was short-lived in the personal living quarters of Ferrus. Although neither of them won outright, Ferrus destroyed Fireblade, which left him exposed for Fulgrim to knock him out. Although Fulgrim could have killed Ferrus in that very moment, he did not do so until the two met again on Isstvan V. While the Morlocks and Phoenix Guard clashed, the two incredibly close brothers faced off. Fulgrim wielded Forgebreaker, the warhammer he created for Ferrus so long ago, and in turn, Ferrus Manus wielded Fireblade, which he had restored for this special occasion. The battlefield was illuminated for hundreds of meters by the ferocious energies of the weapons clashing. The armor of both Primarchs was dented, torn and blackened, but Ferrus was on the back foot. Fulgrim wielded Forgebreaker with incredible speed and sent every blow from his brother wide. Blood had been spilled, but Ferrus took the first true wound when Forgebreaker hammered his skull. He managed to return the favor as Fulgrim's stomach was cut, and he dropped Forgebreaker. Yet Fulgrim regretted his actions, and in that moment of weakness, Ferrus attempted to end the fight. But Fulgrim drew the lair blade from his hip, and it stopped Fireblade before ending his life. The blade would imbue Fulgrim with what only could be called diabolical strength, and he managed to overpower Ferrus Manus, pushing the man of steel and iron back with raw, dark might. The silver blade of Lair slashed and wounded Ferrus. Soon, the Gorgon found himself on his knees. Fireblade dropped from his hands. In this moment, Fulgrim realized everything, his mistakes, his flaws, and he saw the monster that he was becoming. His blade moved with a life of his own when Ferrus reached for his weapon. The monumental energies bound within Ferrus would tear free in a shrieking wail of blinding light. Ferrus Manus died. Fulgrim fell to his knees and screamed. Although Ferrus Manus could not hold his own against Fulgrim for a bit of time, one apparent thing is that Fulgrim held back during both fights. His love for Ferrus was too great, and if he had fought him with the same anger that Ferrus had, the Primarch of the Tent might have never even reached Isstvan V in the first place. When it comes to Perturabo, the second Lord of Iron, we again have two fights. Now, admittedly, the first fight was not really a fight, so much as Perturabo smashing Fulgrim's face into a miniature warhound to make a point. So when Perturabo gets a drop on his brother, he can't take him out. And we have seen Perturabo also contain Angron with a proper planning and mindset. The mindset of being utterly done with his brother's bullshit. But what about the second fight between the Phoenician and the Lord of Iron? Perturabo had been tricked by Fulgrim. There was no Angel Exterminatus that could win the Horus Heresy. Instead, it was all a trick for Fulgrim to ascend. Using the Maw-Eater Stone, Fulgrim was devouring Perturabo's life force, making him weak. Yet Perturabo was not to be defeated so easily. Fighting hard, he took back some of his power from the Maw-Eater Stone when Fulgrim believed himself to have won. Fulgrim still tried to ascend, even promising his brother he could bring back Olympia and turn it into Perturabo's perfect dream. The Lord of Iron did not trust his brother anymore, and he did not listen. Yet before the two could properly fight over the stone, the Shattered Legions ambushed them, during which Nikona Sharokin destroyed the stone. With the stone shattered, Perturabo's stolen life was properly returned to him. Yet with the same shattering of that stone, Fulgrim's transformation began. Devouring the soul stones of the Eldar of the Crone World, Idris, Perturabo raised Forgebreaker and killed his brother. Yet his final blow only completed the transformation. His mortal shell was destroyed, and now he had become an avatar of Slaanesh. His body was desecrated for the ritual. With Perturabo, Fulgrim did not show his martial superiority, but instead beat his brother via sheer charisma, wit and preying on Perturabo's trust. Fulgrim had become a traitor. Ferrus Manus had said it best, and as a traitor, there was to be no more trust in the broken fraternity of the Primarchs. Rogal Dorn. Now we have seen Fulgrim best his brother Perturabo in a game of wits, but he would also go on to fight his brother Dorn during the Siege of Terra, which this time he did use his martial skill, as seen in Saturnine. When the Emperor's children attacked the walls of Terra, they found an easy target until Rogal Dorn and the most elite of his warriors arrived. Fulgrim gloated as he pushed Dorn back, but suddenly his words were robbed from him with a mighty blow of Dorn's sword. Similarly to his fight with Alpharius, Dorn attacked in silence. Fulgrim tasted his blood and found only Dorn's shield. Dorn tore into Fulgrim, pushing him back. Both Primarchs tore into each other, landing and parrying perfect blows. Dorn ignored Fulgrim's baiting, humiliating his legion, but when he ran his sword through Fulgrim, he would learn something horrifying. Fulgrim's armor and body began to reknit itself. Every wound and ruined scrap of armor returned to its perfect form. He transformed into a massive coiling snake, showing his demonic ascension. And as appropriate for a champion of Slaanesh, he declared he was bored with the fight and turned away. Dorn realized in that very moment that, had he goaded him back, Fulgrim could and would have killed him right there and then. While Rogal Dorn did a decent number on Fulgrim, this moment highlights mostly what Fulgrim has become and not his actual skill. Fulgrim barely attempted to fight, instead seeking to use his biting words to enrage Dorn so he would feel the defense of Terra. But when Rogal Dorn did not react, any fun from the fight was gone. There was no pleasure, there was no access. Dorn was a light sting to Fulgrim, a sting not worth pursuing. Fulgrim had been used as cannon fodder too. He could have beaten Dorn, killed Sigismund and personally broke the reinforcements of the Imperial Fist. But what is the point? A slow grind with no pleasure or joy? That is not worthy of his time. Now for the last time that Fulgrim has fought a Primarch, let's look at the second most influential duel in the entirety of 40k, right behind Archtraitor Horus versus the Emperor of Mankind. Rabute Guilliman versus Fulgrim, the man who made the chapters as they are today, the demigod son of the Emperor who wrote the Codex Astartes, against the man who made a joke of his perfection, as seen in Dark Imperium. Swift as a striking viper, Fulgrim attacked, all four blades driving down at his brother Primarch so quickly that they did not seem to pass through the intervening air. Guilliman caught them on the edge of the Gladius in Kandor, its field generator smoked at the effort of halting them, the resulting eruption of energy threw both Primarchs backwards. Fulgrim attacked again, Guilliman cried out as one blade found its way past his parries and left a smoking groove in the ceramite around his left arm. He would not win this fight. Guilliman called in his sons, Teal and Andros, leading the first and second companies, burst into the Heliopolis. Their guns aimed at the traitor Primarch. Fulgrim pushed Guilliman back and summoned his sons to join the fight. Guilliman countered and parried, his mighty gauntlet batting aside Fulgrim's swords as his own hunted through the caged steel of Fulgrim wove with his four blades, seeking out the tainted flesh behind. Fulgrim snarled as the tip of Guilliman's gladius nicked his skin. Rising on his tail, he swept down with his sword in quick succession. Guilliman's weapons found them all, turning them aside with economical movements. Nevertheless, he was sorely pressed. Guilliman cut and feinted, using the hand of Dominion to catch the sword wielded by Fulgrim's lower left arm. The unholy metal of the blade cut into the thick ceramite of the gauntlet, and corrosive poison spattered the armor of reason, eating into it with smoking ferocity. Pain somehow afflicted Guilliman through his armor, as if his war blades itself were hurt. A spicy agony burned up the nerves in his arms from his interface sockets. He gritted his teeth and twisted the gauntlet. Energy crackled and banged, and the sword snapped in two. When Guilliman wounded Fulgrim again, the Demon Primarch would grow enraged. He body slammed into Guilliman, knocking him down. When his bodyguards formed a shield wall, they were cut to pieces. And then suddenly, Fulgrim was gone. Guilliman ran the theoreticals and practicals through his mind. He was losing, and might even die. "Fulgrim!" he bellowed. "Face me!" A whip-fast motion flickered to his side. Fulgrim sped through the melee, coming from the left. Guilliman barely had time to raise his sword before Fulgrim crashed into him, snarling incoherently, knocking him backwards. He wrapped his tail around his brother Primarch, constricting him with such force that his armor plates began to crack. Casting aside one sword, Fulgrim reached down and grasped Guilliman's head.
"You want to face me? So face me,"
he said, wrenching free Guilliman's helmet, exposing his naked flesh to the air. The stink of his corrupted brother made Guilliman gag. His head swam as the demon Primarch scent invaded his nose and throat, unmoderated by his battle helm systems.
"Pathetic,"
cried Fulgrim. He uncurled, flinging Guilliman aside. His wounded arm was already healing, crackling warp energies working in tandem with the Primarch's physiology to make him whole again. He conjured swords from poisoned mist to fill his empty hands and flew at the master of Macragge. Guilliman staggered upright, gasping. Every breath poured more of Fulgrim's lethal perfume into his lungs, a poison so potent that it taxed his superhuman body. He parried and parried again. but he could land no counter-strike and was forced back up the stairs. A blow flung his arm wide. He never saw the blade that cut him coming. A cold kiss across his throat, followed by searing agony. Arterial blood sprayed from his ruined neck. He clamped his hand to the wound, but it gaped beneath armored fingers, and the blood would not stop. Poison crawled in where his blood flowed out. Already it affected him, numbing his lips and making his eyes heavy. With supreme effort, Rabute Guilliman raised the Gladius Incantor for the last time. During Fulgrim's duel with Guilliman, he truly showed just how much on a different level the Demon Primarchs are. He toyed with Guilliman, even sending in his sons during the duel to tease the Lord of Ultramar, not because he needed them, but to mimic the larger war the two Primarchs were fighting, the one that Rabute Guilliman's Codex Astartes lost him. Now that we have covered most of Fulgrim's official lore fights with his brothers, it is time to ask who amongst his brothers could actually beat him, if any. For this, we run into the slight issue of the traitor Primarchs and their ascension. So for now, I think it's best to run some of our theoreticals on Fulgrim pre-demonhood, facing off against each of his brothers. I do have to say, everything I'm about to cover should be seen as a theoretical result and not a practical one. I will be doing these rapid fire style, so I don't bore you with hours of lore. Unless you guys want a future video about ranking the Primarchs, I'm happy to do that. Let me know in the comment section down below. For this, we will run from the least likely to beat Fulgrim to those that might actually stand a chance. Starting with Alpharius and Omegon. If his duel with Rogaldorn showed anything, he is the least capable Primarch of standing up against Fulgrim. For all his skill, speed and cunning, Fulgrim would fold him like a lawn chair and behead him before the battle even started. Fulgrim is heavily underestimated in his raw strength, so even if it came down to wrestling, Alpharius would find no respite. Dorn was an unbreakable bastion Alpharius broke himself on, but Fulgrim would be a duelist who would make a mockery of the lightning strikes of the Pale Spear. A fight between Mortarion and Fulgrim would be interesting. While Mortarion is not the frothing berserker Angron is, when fighting the Khan, their duel devolved into something that was literally described as two Hivegangers brawling. A fight with Fulgrim would be won in endurance and brutality. Surprisingly, Fulgrim has one of the fastest healing abilities of the Primarchs, even before demonhood. So endurance-wise, Mortarion would bite off more than he can chew. Yet Fulgrim is found lacking in sheer brutality and not one for dirty fighting, generally. Yet in my theoretical, I do believe Fulgrim would come out on top due to Mortarion's sheer arrogance. Jagatai Khan beat him by enduring more punishment and tiring him out before delivering his killing blow. Fulgrim would not choose this exact strategy, but a similar one. What is a handful of scratches in the face of perfect swordsmanship after all? For a Primarch unable to die, Vulcan has performed surprisingly badly against his brothers in a fight. Yet Vulcan also shares many things with Ferrus Manus, except for one thing. To Fulgrim, Vulcan is just one of his brothers, and in a fight with him there would be no doubt, hesitation or holding back. Fulgrim would honestly beat Vulcan even faster than he did so for Ferrus Manus. Vulcan's biggest benefit is that of being a perpetual, but as seen in some of his fights, this only allows Vulcan to win through raw attrition. Also, don't forget, Ferrus Manus is literally bigger than Vulcan, so it does not come down to raw strength. As seen earlier in the video, Lorgar is found wanting when it comes to fighting his brothers, and he only lives on due to Curse's intervention. We even have a small fight between Lorgar and Fulgrim in the novel Slaves to Darkness. Yet this fight has a rather unique twist. Due to Lorgar's understanding of demonology and Enuncia, he was able to literally command Fulgrim to stop fighting. Unfortunately for Lorgar, he is fighting his brother as a regular Primarch. Lorgar might perform better only via his psychic talent, but ultimately he will be cut down. While psychic powers are an absolute terror among the Primarchs, these powers are not quite enough to allow a less martially attuned Primarch to punch above his weight and win. Fulgrim's speed and often methodical way of fighting would be even worse for Magnus, as while he managed to survive Rus, can the same really be said for Fulgrim? Fulgrim adapts quickly, thinks fast, and has shown he can plan very far ahead when he needs to. So far, Fulgrim has held several advantages in our theoreticals, but when facing Corax and some of the others, he might actually finally lose in the speed department. Yet beating Fulgrim is something very questionable for the Ravenlord. If anything, a clash between Corax and Fulgrim would end up with both Primarchs severely injured, Corax being forced to disappear into the shadows, while Fulgrim would have to be picked up by his sons. Conrad Curse is in many ways lesser than his brothers. If anything, he is on the level of Corax with a twist. While Corax is one with the Knight, Curse has the gift of foresight. This same gift has allowed him to compete with brothers who far outmatch him. But the real question is, would he try to drag down Fulgrim into a brawl, or would he take a different approach? Curse more or less had to match Corax blow for blow. Against the Lion he had to fight as dirty as possible, and with Vulcan he had to get into his head. Fighting Fulgrim as an equal is not in the cards for Curse. Fighting dirty could work, but not to the same degree it did with the Lion. If anything, Curse would need to use a mix of all of his skills to truly compete with Fulgrim, but even then, his chances of winning are rather slim. Don't forget, Fulgrim can perfect any skill. Of all the Primarchs, Horus would face Fulgrim with the most confidence and the least amount of bravado. A fight between these two brothers would be one of the most grueling kinds we could ever see. Horus is a skilled warrior, a great commander, but he carries with him the brutal nature of Catonia's gangs. Fulgrim's raw warrior talent would definitely compete with Horus, but in any tactical sense, he could be pushed on the back foot. Yet, could he use his brother's brutal nature to his advantage? Getting Guilliman to walk into a trap worked, but if you know how the Catonian gangs fight, you would know that Horus would not fall for it. We also know Horus would not shy away from confronting Fulgrim, as during the opening stages of the heresy, he was displeased with his brother. Honestly, this fight is one of the hardest ones to truly predict, as while both Primarchs are very different, they are clearly matched. I think in the end of the day, it comes down to skill, speed, talent, and a bit of luck. And so far, Fulgrim has been a lot more lucky. Now, whether you like Leman Russ or not, he is one of the greatest warriors among the Primarchs. He lacks the indomitable nature of Dorn, or the intellect of Perturabo, but in a straight slugging match, Russ might get a drop on Fulgrim. Russ likes to let people believe he is dumber than he actually is, and this might well be something that Fulgrim could fall for. But raw aggressiveness is something that so far has never been enough to bring down Fulgrim. Now, as we get past the Primarchs who would fight Fulgrim to a draw, we notice that Fulgrim finds himself matched in more ways than one. If anything, Fulgrim would never be able to plan on how to beat the Khan. Jagatai has it all, doesn't he? He's ferocious, he's a genius, and has the skill and speed. While Fulgrim would not be hopeless in a fight with the Khan, it is not going to be pretty for him, and he has a likely chance of losing rather than winning. The only way I could see him win is sheer willpower and his healing capabilities. Now, this might be a bit controversial and maybe a fair bit biased, but I believe Angron could have a very good chance of beating Fulgrim. Angron matches his brother in every department except one, that being the mental game. But in return, Angron is an absolute monster. As a normal Primarch, we have seen Angron do some crazy things, from holding up a Warhound to even almost killing Guilliman. But which one of these is the crux of the argument? Demon Fulgrim was able to toy and play with Guilliman, but he did have to use the old injury from the Anatomy to bring Guilliman down quickly. Angron, on the other hand, has butchered his way through the entirety of New Syria and then fought Guilliman. Were it not for Lorgar turning him into a demon, the Avenging Son would have died in that very moment. So while Angron is far away from being able to always beat Fulgrim, out of the Primarchs we have covered so far, he might have the best chance. Now, if there is a single Primarch to have it all and more when measuring themselves against Fulgrim, it is Lion L. Johnson. He has ferocity, he has endurance, skill, speed, and a good head on his shoulders. The Lion is not only the template from which all of the other Primarchs were created, but he is arguably one of the greatest amongst them, with very few getting close. A fight between the Lion and Phoenician would be a spectacle of swordsmanship. There would be no rolling on the floor, no punching and biting, but instead the powerful clashing of blades. But who would come out on top? Well, the Lion might have a chance if he has a moment where he finally snaps. When he fought Leman Russ, both brothers held back until the Lion knocked out Russ for laughing about their fight. When it came to Curse, the Lion started to beat him when he was utterly done dealing with his shenanigans. So between these two Primarchs, there will be that one punch or dirty kick that decides the duel. Depending on who is willing to stoop low first, that one is definitely gonna be the one walking away from the fight. Okay, for this one you're going to have to hear me out. Sure, Sanguinius has an actual 50-50 win rate when it comes to fighting Primarchs, but there is something we should remember. Sanguinius has never faced a regular Primarch. He has only faced Demon Angron and Horus Ascended, and when facing Demon Angron specifically, he had been fighting non-stop during the Siege of Terra and even fought Kabanda, one of the strongest bloodthirsters in the setting. If Fulgrim can play into Sanguinius' love for his brothers, he stands a chance. If it comes down to straight martial skill, the Angel might obliterate the Snake. If Fulgrim wants to win this one, he needs to play Sanguinius' mind, or through sheer attrition, realize that Sanguinius was destined to die someday anyway, and turn away before he stops that future. Fulgrim's true power is not in his perfection or his gifts from Slaanesh, but in simply not caring anymore. Fulgrim has both achieved and failed in becoming perfect. So what does it matter? He has become a demon Primarch. There's not a single one of his brothers who can lay him low now. So why would he even attempt to improve as a warrior? Fulgrim's tragedy is not in losing Ferrus Manus or falling to Slaanesh, but rather in the loss of self. Fulgrim was once a bright star, one that seemed as though it would never tarnish, yet ultimately he flew too close to the sun and felt its judgment. Bearing the Palatine Phoenix, carrying the sword of his beloved brother, being the exemplar of what it means to be a Primarch, all don't matter anymore. What is the pursuit of perfection in the face of excess? Fulgrim's true glory days are long behind him. His sons crave his attention, but he is too distracted. His reflection has cracked and he has been utterly lost. Now there is only depravity and boredom. When Rogaldorn's blade struck Fulgrim, there was no thrill, so why even bother fighting? Why invade the Imperium you helped build when you can take away their one hope? If any Primarch is the Emperor's heir, it would be Roboute Guilliman. And what feeling is more satisfying than taking him away from the father who never even loved you? For all his might, skill, and experience as a warlord, Fulgrim's story is easily the most depressing of the Primarchs. His greatest days are behind him, and now he has become addicted to capturing any new feeling. And when he finds it, he exploits it until it becomes meaningless. A never-ending cycle of thrill after thrill, until they all become something mundane. So, is Fulgrim the most powerful Primarch? Yes and no. In many ways, Fulgrim is the most underestimated Primarch. His skills are the most varied, and whatever he picks up, he can perfect. As a commander in general, only the likes of Horus or Ferrus Manus outclass him. As a warrior, there are a couple of Primarchs who could beat him, but when looking at the larger picture, Fulgrim is in his own league above the demigod litter. How many Primarchs have actually managed to trick Roboute Guilliman into a trap? Not only that, but in some of the excerpts where we look at Fulgrim fighting, his personal bodyguard often wins right there alongside him. The only department Fulgrim is found lacking in is his psychic ability, and that is something he has no choice in. Fulgrim has fought Ferrus Manus twice and won both times. And for those that don't know, Ferrus Manus is canonically the largest Primarch. Fulgrim has lost one physical altercation with Perturabo, but in return nearly killed him. In a fight with Rogaldorn, he was so unimpressed he just left. And with Roboute Guilliman, he put him into a 10,000 year long coma. By raw win-to-lose ratio, Fulgrim is the most accomplished Primarch. Were it not for Yvraine, Fulgrim would have held the record of having killed 2 Primarchs, which no one else in the entire setting can say for themselves. Yet what also makes Fulgrim the least of the Primarchs is his depressing fall. The corruption and stagnation that came with it. In his ascension to demonhood, he did pick up some new skills, that being a supreme mastery in poison and toxins. And can any of the other demon Primarchs make that same claim? Magnus, Lorgar and Perturabo have gained much knowledge, but none of them truly picked up a new set of skills like Fulgrim. And you know, perfected it to the absolute core. But what do you think of all this? If you had to pick a Primarch, which one do you think would win in an all-out brawl? Are there any abilities from other Primarchs that would actually surprise or overpower Fulgrim? And with the return of the Snake Boy himself, which Primarch would you like to see him fight this time? A rematch with the Avenging Sun Roboute Guilliman, or maybe a fresh new duel? One where he has to fight the returned Lion L. Johnson, who, let's not forget, is currently able to teleport. Thank you once again to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus for sponsoring this video. This is the perfect time to join, so use the link down in my description and comment section below to immerse yourself in the grim darkness of the far future. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe if you think I deserved it with this video. Let me know your comments, ideas, suggestions, concerns or feedback down in the comment section below. And I will be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye.